Hello, welcome to this latest webinar in our series for the International Education and Schools Fair. This webinar is on the importance of STEAM for children and the future, and I'm delighted to have with me today Steve Katz, the International School of Kuala Lumpur, and Ryan Ball, Design and Technology Association. In this webinar, we're going to explore STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts and maths in schools. What does STEAM mean in the education context for all children? And why is this important today against a backdrop of global skill shortages and a fast-changing working environment? We will have contributions from Steve, who is the Elementary School Technology Coordinator at the International School of Kuala Lumpur, and also Ryan, who is the Director of Education, Design and Technology Association, and both have extensive knowledge of teaching in international schools. They will share insights for parents selecting schools and supporting their children and young people to the next stage of education and the world of work. So, welcome to you both. Lovely to have you join us. So, I think we better start with, what does STEAM mean in the education context for children of all ages, and why is this important today against a backdrop, as we all know, of global skill shortages and a fast-changing working environment? So who would like to start? Steve?
Well, to define the term, STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, art, and math, for those of you who don't know. And I believe the philosophy behind this is that it's more of a transdisciplinary type of activity where we're doing all these things together as opposed to teaching them apart, like we have in traditional classrooms. And Ryan, feel free to jump in at any point when you'd like. But I think that there's definitely shortages in these fields, and it's important that we're focusing on them. Especially the area of coding, which has a huge deficit of jobs at this point. They just can't fill the jobs because code has become so prevalent. And in addition to that, in these fields, there's definitely an underrepresentation of women and people of color. And so to try and really diversify this field, I think, is important. But really, as opposed to teaching these skills individually, I think it's important that we're teaching students the thinking skills to solve problems within this integrated type of curriculum.
Ryan, so your whole new role is about exactly that, and how A fits into STEM. So perhaps you can elaborate from your perspective.
Yeah, it really is. And, I'm really passionate about the whole area of STEM, and especially STEAM. It seems to add the design element into it, I suppose. I think historically, maybe the STEM approach has been quite focused on purely mathematics and science. And I think having the extra element of creativity through the arts is really key. And I mean, in the UK, we have a subject called Design and Technology, which seems to kind of encompass the whole of STEAM, really. And I'm really passionate about it, both as an educator, but probably more importantly as a parent as well. And it's something I want my kids to explore and have experience of, because there are so many opportunities available through the STEAM kind of selection of subjects, and like Steve touched on, opening up all of these, what are often called soft skills, which isn't a term that I particularly like, but the soft skills of problem solving and curiosity and resilience and things, which really STEAM kind of underpins and really helps to deliver in our young people.
And you also have a teaching background.
Yeah, that's right. So I qualified as a teacher in 2002. So yeah, I've been a teacher for just over 20 years and purely taught design and technology. So again, encompassing everything to do with science, maths, engineering, technology, etc., and the arts as well. So yeah, I was also head of art for quite a while at an international school also.
Brilliant, thank you. Right, so am I right in thinking design and technology is misunderstood and represented by parents and also the employers and a lot of government ministers in some countries, including the UK? And possibly it's more valued, the topic is subjects are more valued in Asia, for example. I don't know if you think that's true. And is this true of your experience in both of you working in Asia and the Middle East? So
I mean, it's been my experience. Yeah, I mean, parents obviously have got a really important role to play. One of the main stakeholders in kids' education. And from my own personal experience in the last sort of 20 years of teaching it often is misunderstood. It's often seen as potentially a subject for the less able. We used to get it, I think, when I was at school and when I first started teaching, comments of, it's good for kids that are good with their hands or less academic in inverted commas. And it used to just really irk me. Used to really annoy me that, it's not that. It allows lots of students to access the curriculum. It allows them to access learning in general. But it's also a subject I found with, traditionally more academic students, if we want to label them as that, they also found it really hard, to have something where there isn't a right answer. It's not directly from a textbook and they've got to use their problem solving skills. They've got to come up with a creative solution for a problem. Is something that a lot of kids really found tricky. So we had to spend quite a lot of time in all the schools that I've worked at, really, to try and dispel those myths and really tell them that it's a really vital subject and it's not just about remembering facts and figures, which I think a lot of the students sort of tended to do and still do in some areas.
And of course, parents guide this as well, and subject choice and choice of schools. So, I mean, how do you get that across to parents that they shouldn't always be going for straight academic subjects, particularly when they're getting older and up the school?
Steve, don't know if you want to add?
Well, in the elementary school, we invite them in, and it's really a nice way to get the parents to see what's going on in the classroom. And in the elementary school, it's not a separate subject, but the goal with design and technology is really to integrate it into the core curriculum so that we're improving the teaching and learning. And like, for example, one of the classes is setting up a kind of a model city, fourth grade class. And so they wanted to build some houses and wire them up, and they're experimenting with electricity. And the part I think that I brought to the lesson I know my title is tech coordinator, but I really deal a lot in the makerspace and co-teaching and collaborating. And so most kids, if you ask them to build a house, they cut out 6 pieces and glue them together. And so my contribution to that was teaching them about how to take a 2D template and make it into a 3D shape. And so it's a bit of that developing those skills in design that really fit really nicely with what they're doing already. So the idea is really kind of to integrate some of these skills that soft skills. They're not really soft skills, they're skills. And be able to bring that into a meaningful lesson and not teach it as a separate subject. And I know there is some merit in teaching technology and design as separate subjects, maybe at a higher level, maybe even at a lower level as well, but we like to do it and integrate it within the curriculum.
I think that's, that's something that the best schools do in terms of that context. And I think you touched on it there, Steve, brilliantly, looking at electrical circuits, but putting them into context of something that they're familiar with. In this case, housing is, a great idea, whereas a lot of the time it could just be taught in isolation. The difference between a series and a parallel circuit, for instance, some kids will retain, but you put it then into an unfamiliar situation and a lot of kids will really struggle. So I think subjects like D&T and the STEAM area are really contextualizing it for them so that they can see how it would help them in the big wide world. And I think that's a lot of the conversations that we tended to have with parents, to say, look, it's all around you. You know, everything around you in kind of the man-made world, the built environment has been designed, manufactured by somebody, and they've gone through the processes that your child is going through at school. It might be slightly different materials, it might be slightly different timescale, for instance, but they're handling materials, they're understanding the properties of things, and they're putting together all of their learning from, like we keep alluding to, maths, science, technology, engineering, arts, to put together a tangible, real, useful solution. So that's where the kind of the magic happens, I think.
Yeah, and I would just like to add to that I 100% agree. One of the things that we do is we really focus on the design cycle and having kids go through a process over and over in order to come up with a solution to a problem. And we talk about, this is something that people do in the real world. The first iPhone isn't the current iPhone, right? We keep having different iterations based on questions we want to answer or problems we want to solve. And so we keep seeing new developments in this, and we want to get the kids thinking in that same way, because it's really a life skill.
And do you think schools that teach different curriculums maybe have a different approach as well? It's not just to do with the country or region they're operating in?
I think it can. I think it can differ from school to school and teacher to teacher. You might have exactly the same syllabus, and teachers will deliver it in different ways depending on their strengths, weaknesses, and the way they like to deliver things. So yeah, to an extent, I think you are going to get sort of different approaches. But as I say, the real quality teaching, in my experience, is when they can really bring it to life in the classroom, and the kids get it, and they get that context, and they see how it impacts them and their community.
Yeah, so hands-on understanding, and that's for children of all academic levels as well. It gets them interested and infused.
Absolutely. And I think as a teacher, we have to teach to our strengths. And so what I bring to the role, someone else might not bring quite the same thing. And it's interesting, because when I look at my wife, who's a Spanish teacher, she brings culture into her classroom quite a bit in order to help teach the language. Whereas she had a partner for many years who he would bring in music, and that was his strength. And the kids liked both. They both were able to meet the standards, but they did it with their strengths. And I think that's what we're doing here as well.
And why do you think corporate employers, or the companies that are often moving people to different countries and regions of countries, why do you think it's important for them to understand what's being taught in schools today, whether that's in Asia or the US or the UK? I mean, how do you make that link with these corporate employers that here is some inspiring here are the inspiring generations that are going to do our problem solving?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Like you said, Fiona, they're the next generation, and companies have got to realize that they're going to be the future employers, they're going to be the future creatives, innovators, and we really need to. I strongly believe in the connection between industry and education. It's got to happen. Going back to that kind of context aspect of it as well, they can really bring what we're doing in schools to life. They can set design briefs for kids and for teachers. They can help show teachers what is happening now, in the workforce. When you're in education, it's very easy, if you're not careful, to kind of remain in your little educational bubble and to not see what's happening in industry. So they can kind of, show the things that are happening now. They can enthuse the next generation, both of teachers, of kids. And it's absolutely vital, again, just to bring that context to it and to make it real and relevant. And every employer that I'm speaking to says that they're struggling to get people through the door with the right skills that they need. And we as educators need to know what they want, so we can help to kind of, narrow that skills gap that we hear so often. And only by talking to the people that are in business and industry are we able to do that.
And of course, international schools, Steve, they have parents from all around the world who are with different industry sectors. And in my experience, they're very giving about how they give back their time to the schools to help. Have you found that?
Very much. We have a very active PTA, and we have parents. I see parents on campus every single day. Our problem, if we ask parents to volunteer in the makerspace, we have more than we need. So that's the worst problem we have. They love to be in there and see what's going on. And I would like to add on to what you originally asked, and in addition to what companies are looking for employees, I would say companies who are looking at schools for their employees, the best thing you can do is get into the campus and walk around and see what's going on. And I have to tell you, we have visitors all the time, and there's nothing like seeing what's going on during a regular school day to see if that school is really a place where you want the kids to be. And I have to say, as a parent, both of my children graduated from ISKL, and we were not lucky enough to visit it beforehand, but all the other parents we spoke to made it really clear what our best decision was for where to go. And my wife and I had other job offers, but we felt like ISKL was going to be the best school for our kids. I don't mean to make this a commercial, but I mean, I truly feel that way, and I have zero regrets. But I think, you've got to know where your kid is going to feel comfortable, and not every school is right for every kid. So you've got to look at what are my children like, what are my employees' children like, and is this a good match? And for us, that was the case, for this school.
And Ryan, this magical thing, emotional intelligence that employers are looking for, how does that fit with the education schools are giving nowadays? How are they going to give?
Yeah, again, I sound like a stuck record. It's about making it real, and it's about not just learning facts and figures. It's about giving kids problems and kids genuinely getting stuck. And the amount of times that I've been into schools where they might have the intent statement or the vision of the subject, for instance, and we often talk about it being problem solving, is always high up there when we talk about STEAM. It's actually having engineering opportunities that the kids are genuinely going to get stuck. And from my own kids, I see it that they're often not asked to think, and it drives me crazy at home sometimes. One of my kids will just come out with the most ridiculous questions, and it's very easy to jump in and give them an answer, but to actually step back even as a parent and say, no, just think for a second. I think we've often fallen into that trap over the years of it being about facts and figures and not giving kids the opportunity to get stuck and try and sort problems through themselves. And when they do that, they'll build up resilience, they'll learn more about empathy and all the other soft skills that we talk about.
So do you have, for example, Steve, a case study that will perhaps show how STEAM works and how it's been?
Sure. One of the activities that I did recently with second graders, and we're kind of in the middle, we still have a final bit to do, but they are testing adhesives in their science unit. They're learning about adhesives, what makes a good adhesive. And so what we did was they came into the makerspace, and we took 6 different adhesives, and each group made a bridge using this adhesive. We did our best to make all the bridges with the exact same structure. I mean, simple, like 15 popsicle sticks of a bridge, right? Something very simple, the same amount of adhesive, whether it was glue or sticky tack and different kinds of glue. And then we came back and we tested them by putting weight on it and seeing how the adhesive held up. And the kids, they did their observations, both when they were building the bridge. What is my adhesive like? Is it thick? Is it thin? What does it look like? What color it is? And all those kind of things. Going through the scientific process, they made predictions about how they felt like their bridge would hold up in comparison with the other bridges. And then as we were putting the weight on them, they were doing a different set of observations. First of all, they're logging how much weight their bridge is able to hold. And it was very interesting. One of the most interesting comments I had in this activity, and remember, it was the second graders, right? And one of the bridges was just bowed, like more so than any of the other ones, really, really bent a lot. And the group who created it, this one was, the adhesive was hot glue. They used a hot glue gun and to put their bridge together. And when they said, of course it's bowing, the hot glue is very flexible. And when it was drying, it was getting stringy, and, and it was just like one of those things, like when we talk about thinking deeply about adhesives, which they wouldn't do if they just read it out of a book or saw a video. I mean, these kids are really getting it. And funny side story is I had this same class back in to do a different project last week, and they were asking for the glue that they thought was the best glue for this next project. They're like, I'd like the X glue, please. And, and it was one of those things. And I was like, oh my God, I can't, like, it just blew my mind how much they learned by just a really simple experiment. And by the way, the end part is they're going to make their own glue. And then we're going to build bridges again and see how it fares up against the store-bought glues. So it was really, I mean, they were really thinking deeply about this and came up with some very interesting reasons why some would break at the joints versus breaking in the center of the stick and things like that. It was really cool, really good experience.
You can't start too young then.
No, and you could tell it was exciting. It was like my best day of the year. It was very exciting.
So you were telling me about an interesting something with trains and magnetics, Ryan, that you could be.
Yeah. So one of the things that we're trying to do at the Design Technology Association to connect schools with industry, because it can be tricky. It takes a lot of time and commitment on both parties to make those connections happen. So we're trying to facilitate some of these connections. And one of them, there's a company down in Wembley in London that are doing some really, really cool stuff. They are in the central reservation of motorways. Apparently, when they built them, they put in some tunnels at the time, and they didn't really know what they were going to use these tunnels for, but they were trying to future-proof it. They thought it might be cables and wires and all different things for future telecommunication things. So there's lots of unused tunnels running underneath our motorways in the UK. And this one company are working on some, they're called trains. It's kind of, I don't know, about the size of a go-kart, I suppose, to try and take a lot of our traffic off the road, thinking of delivery drivers and trucks for Amazon parcels, etc. So they're making these things that are firing them under the ground using magnets, electromagnets, to make it a clean form of travel, to take, as I say, lorries and stuff off the road. And they're doing these really cool things, and their local neighbours in the community don't know they exist. It's just in a kind of a blank warehouse, and nobody knows the cool stuff that they're doing. So they wanted to work with a local school. They also went for an elementary or a primary school in the area to do coding and D&T with these students, so they could make kind of small simulation models and kind of test them. So these kids would learn what they were doing day to day in this kind of warehouse. And the feedback that we got from them was fantastic. They do them as after school clubs for, I think, about 8 weeks. Completely voluntary on both parts, and the kids were using microbits and, say, electromagnets and various different bits of hardware, and every student afterwards said that they wanted to go into engineering, which was just a brilliant success story. And just really, really cool stuff.
Brilliant. Good. And then I think you also have run some competitions, don't you, Ryan? Does that work for stimulating interest for you?
Yeah, we let teachers know about them rather than necessarily facilitate them ourselves. But there's lots of opportunities in the UK and overseas as well. So there's one that's out at the moment called the Make Able Challenge, which is looking at trying to use 3D printing to produce items that make people's lives better, basically. And there's a whole array of different things that kids from a really young age are producing to, I don't know, help people with limited mobility, or to help people, with dexterity of even like opening jars and, working out how to take their tablets and things if they've got limited use of their hands, for instance. And it's like a lot of these things are completely free. Again, it gives the opportunity for the kids to work alongside others, work as a team, to try and solve real, genuine problems. And for the teacher's side of it, there's lots of free teaching aids and resources as well that go alongside it to try and help them and to implement it into the classroom as well. So, yeah, there's lots of opportunities that we try and push out on our site and through various different other social media.
Great. And so how are you thinking far ahead? Are you feeling there's hope for the future? It sounds as if you have a great time, Steve, on your everyday life at ISKL.
Well, yeah, I'm very, very hopeful for the future. We're doing our best to teach our students to have empathy, just like what you were saying, getting them out into the real world, solving real world problems, and live ethically. Part of our vision is taking care of taking care of themselves, taking care of others, and taking care of this place. We're really looking to have our students be globally minded. And, the future of the world rests in the hands of the students that we're educating. And as I said, both my kids graduated from ISKL, and I know they're both on the path to making the world a better place. And I think this is a very common path for the kids we are teaching and or have taught. And I'm very, very hopeful for the future. I think we're putting good thinkers out into the world with good experiences, and I think they're going to do great things.
And how about you rubbing shoulders with the corporate world, Ryan? Are you hopeful that the young people are going to be able to solve problems?
It depends what day you ask me, Fiona. I think I'm quietly optimistic, not necessarily concerned with the kids. The young people that are coming through are great. It's whether the subject is going to flourish, and in some schools it is, in some schools it's not. And we're often talking in a bit of a vacuum and a bit of a bubble, and talking to too many of the kind of like-minded individuals, the likes of Steve and yourself, for instance, that get it. But all too often there are people that don't get it, and they think that there's one route of success in life, and that's through studying through textbooks and sitting exams, and that sorted me out in life, so it'll suit everybody else out. And they're often quite blinkered as to different approaches, routes, and passions and needs in life. So it's those people that we need to try and tap into. And a lot of the work that we're doing is, like I mentioned, trying to work more closely with business and industry who've got their own challenges that are in a similar sector that ours are as well, in terms of pipeline and skills. And there's a shortage in pretty much every engineering sector in the UK, and I'm sure it's similar sort of story overseas as well. And our kids need to fill these gaps, not just from a point of view in terms of employment, but in terms of well-being as well. It's an enjoyable subject that we want our students to be able to explore, and sadly not every student has got this opportunity at the minute.
Well, hopefully this discussion will have brought some positives to people who will think again about STEAM and its importance, and share with young people and their parents how important it is, and to enjoy education. I've hugely enjoyed our conversation, and thank you both for being so generous with your case studies and examples and your time. So thank you very much for enjoying us, and please do keep in touch. We'll be thrilled to know what else is happening with you. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you so much, Fiona.
Thanks a lot.
So we've been speaking with Steve Katz, the Elementary School Technology Coordinator of the International School of Kuala Lumpur, ISKL. and also Ryan Ball, Director of Education, Design and Technology Association. So thank you to them both. You'll have seen their bios today, and do feel free to get in touch with them for further information. I'm Fiona Murchie, Managing Editor of Relocate and Relocate Global, and you can find out more about our resources and what's been going on in the schools fair by logging into relocateglobal.com. Thank you very much for joining us.